Story number 1. Whispers in the Atacama. I never believed in the supernatural. Growing up in Kansas, where the nights were long and the skies vast, I learned to attribute strange noises and eerie silences to the quirks of nature. But nothing in my rational mind could have prepared me for the haunting silence of the Atacama Desert in 2018. A silence that swallowed a group of American tourists and left behind nothing but questions and local legends whispered in fearful tones. My name is Mark Thompson, and I was part of the search and rescue team dispatched to find the missing group. We arrived in San Pedro de Atacama, a remote town perched on the edge of one of the driest deserts on Earth. The locals greeted us with wary eyes and hushed conversations about the desert's unforgiving nature and the ancient spirits said to roam its endless sands. The missing group, comprised of 6 friends from Boston, had embarked on a trekking expedition to explore the Valley of the Moon. Their excitement was palpable during our initial briefing, but so was our concern. The Atacama is notorious for its extreme conditions, blinding daylight, freezing nights, and unpredictable weather. Yet, the group's disappearance baffled us. There were no signs of struggle, no abandoned gear, and no communication after their last check-in. Our team set out at dawn, the sun rising over the salt flats, casting long shadows across the barren landscape. The air was crisp, the silence almost tangible, broken only by the crunch of our boots on the hard ground and the distant call of a lone condor circling overhead. As we ventured deeper into the desert, the vastness of the Atacama pressed in around us, a stark reminder of our insignificance against its ancient expanse. On the second day, we reached the outskirts of the Valley of the Moon. The landscape here was otherworldly, towering cliffs carved by centuries of wind and water, their surfaces gleaming under the relentless sun. The valley floor was littered with salt formations and jagged rocks, creating a maze that seemed to shift with every step we took. As night fell, the temperature plummeted, and the desert transformed into a frozen wasteland. We set up camp near a cluster of salt flats, the ground crunching beneath our tents. The stars emerged in a dazzling display, untainted by city lights, their brilliance almost blinding in the clear desert sky. It was then that the whispers began. First, they were faint, barely audible over the howling wind. Soft voices carried through the night, their words indistinct but filled with sorrow. We tried to dismiss them as the desert playing tricks on our minds, the isolation and fatigue warping our perceptions. But the whispers grew louder, more persistent, threading through our dreams and lingering in the air like a chilling presence. One night, as I sat alone by the fire, staring into the dancing flames, I felt a cold breath on my neck. I turned sharply, but there was nothing there. Only the swirling snow and the endless darkness. The whispers became clearer, their messages more desperate. Help us, free us. Determined to uncover the truth, I delved into the local lore, speaking with the elders of San Pedro de Atacama. They recounted tales of ancient spirits bound to the desert, restless souls who wandered the sands, seeking release from their eternal confinement. According to legend, these spirits were the remnants of lost travelers and indigenous warriors, their lives cut short by the desert's unforgiving nature. One elder, Don Alejandro, spoke of a sacred site deep within the Valley of the Moon, a place where the veil between the living and the dead was thin. If you seek to find them, you must offer something of value, he advised, his voice gravelly with age. Only then can their spirits find peace and guide you to the lost. With this new knowledge, our search took on a desperate urgency. We navigated through the maze of salt flats and rocky outcrops, the whispers guiding us toward the sacred site. The journey was treacherous, the desert's harsh conditions testing our endurance at every turn. But the thought of the missing friends fueled our determination, pushing us to press forward despite the mounting exhaustion. On the 4th day, we arrived at the sacred site, a hidden oasis surrounded by towering cliffs and a still, frozen pond at its center. The air was thick with an otherworldly energy, the whispers now a cacophony of voices begging for release. We set up a ceremonial circle, placing candles and personal items belonging to the missing group at its heart. I stepped into the circle, feeling the weight of the desert's ancient sorrow pressing down on me. Holding a photograph of the friends, I began the ritual, reciting prayers of peace and remembrance. The candles flickered, their flames dancing in the frigid air as the whispers intensified, swirling around us like a spectral storm. Suddenly, the pond at the center began to shimmer, the ice cracking and splintering under an unseen force. Figures emerged from the depths, ghostly apparitions of the missing friends, their eyes hollow yet filled with gratitude. "Thank you," they whispered, their voices now serene and free from torment. "We are free." The spirits faded into the night, the oppressive energy lifting as the storm outside began to calm. The desert, once a place of endless struggle and loss, now felt peaceful, the whispers silenced by our act of compassion. We had broken the curse, allowing the lost souls to find their eternal rest and guiding us to the truth of their disappearance. As dawn broke over the valley of the moon, the first rays of sunlight pierced through the lingering clouds, casting a warm glow over the frozen pond. The storm had passed, leaving behind a serene, snow-covered landscape that seemed almost untouched by the horrors of the night before. We knew then that our lives had been irrevocably changed, bonded by the shared experience of facing the desert's darkest secrets. Returning to San Pedro de Atacama, we shared our story with the locals, the whispers of the spirits now a tale of hope and release rather than fear and sorrow. The missing friends were never found, but their spirits were finally at peace. Their stories a testament to the enduring power of compassion and the mysteries that lie hidden in the heart of the Atacama Desert. Years later, when I think back to that harrowing winter, I still hear the faint echoes of those desperate whispers, a reminder of the thin veil that separates our world from the unknown. The Atacama remains a place of beauty and danger, its sands holding countless secrets waiting to be uncovered. And as long as there are stories to be told and spirits to be remembered, the legacy of the blizzard of 2018 will live on, a chilling reminder of nature's unyielding power and the ghosts that wander its eternal expanse. Story number 2. Whispers of Hoya Back. I never believed in ghosts or extraterrestrial phenomena. Growing up in a suburban neighborhood in Ohio, my most supernatural encounters were the occasional power outage or the neighbor's cat mysteriously vanishing for a day. But everything changed the summer of 2019 when I decided to visit Hoya Back, Hungary, the so-called paranormal zone. In search of inspiration for my next novel, Hoya Back was infamous worldwide for its eerie reputation. Nestled in the heart of Transylvania, this abandoned forest had earned the moniker Bermuda Triangle of Europe due to the numerous reports of UFO sightings, ghostly apparitions, and unexplained disappearances. Local legends spoke of a portal to another dimension, places where reality bent and twisted, leaving visitors questioning their sanity. I arrived in Bucharest and made my way to the small town nearest to Hoya Back. The journey was long, winding through dense forests and rugged terrain that seemed untouched by time. As I approached the forest's edge, a sense of foreboding settled over me. The trees stood tall and gnarled, their branches intertwining like skeletal fingers against the dusky sky. The air was thick with humidity, and an unnatural silence enveloped the area, broken only by the occasional rustle of leaves. Setting up my base camp near the entrance of the forest, I felt a mix of excitement and anxiety. Equipped with my camera, notebooks, and a portable recorder, I was determined to uncover the truth behind Hoya Back's sinister reputation. The locals had warned me about the forest's unpredictability, but skepticism drove me forward. As dusk turned to night, I ventured deeper into the woods. The path was barely visible, covered in a thick layer of fallen leaves and overgrown vegetation. My flashlight pierced through the darkness, revealing glimpses of twisted trees and strange, luminescent fungi that seemed to glow with an otherworldly light. Every step I took felt heavy, as if the forest itself was resisting my presence. Hours passed with little to no activity. I documented my surroundings meticulously, noting the peculiarities of the landscape. Then, just as I began to lose hope of encountering anything, the atmosphere shifted. The temperature dropped abruptly, and a dense fog rolled in, obscuring my vision. My breath became visible, and the howling wind carried faint, dissonant whispers that seemed to emanate from all directions. "Leave, go back." I froze, heart pounding in my chest. The whispers grew louder, more urgent, their tones laced with fear and desperation. Ignoring the growing sense of dread, I pressed on, driven by a mix of curiosity and determination. The fog thickened, and the forest seemed to close in around me, the trees towering like silent sentinels guarding dark secrets. Suddenly, a bright light pierced through the fog, blinding me momentarily. Shielding my eyes, I saw a strange, circular object hovering above the ground, a classic UFO shape, pulsating with vibrant colors. My mind raced, struggling to reconcile the sight with my rational thoughts. The object remained stationary for a few agonizing moments before vanishing into thin air, leaving behind an eerie silence. Shaken but resolute, I continued my trek, hoping the encounter was just a hallucination brought on by the oppressive environment. But the forest had more in store for me. As midnight approached, the whispers intensified, now accompanied by faint footsteps and the soft sobbing of unseen figures. Shadows danced at the edge of my flashlight's beam, fleeting glimpses of spectral apparitions watching me with hollow eyes. I found a small clearing and decided to set up my equipment for the night, hoping to capture any paranormal activity on camera. As I adjusted my recorder, a cold gust of wind extinguished the candle I had lit for light. Plunged into darkness, I fumbled to relight it, my hands trembling. The whispers coalesced into distinct voices, pleading and tormented. "Help us, find peace." A sudden noise jolted me upright, a loud crash from deeper within the forest. My heart raced as I grabbed my flashlight and cautiously approached the source. The beam of light cut through the darkness, revealing nothing but swirling snow and the twisted branches of ancient trees. Just as I was about to turn back, a figure materialized in front of me, a woman dressed in tattered clothing, her eyes empty voids reflecting immense sorrow. "Why are you here?" she whispered, her voice barely audible over the storm. I stammered, trying to find words. I came to understand, to document." Her gaze bore into mine, and I felt an overwhelming sense of despair emanating from her. "We are trapped by the storm," unable to move on. Before I could respond, the ground beneath me trembled, and the forest seemed to warp and shift. The trees bent unnaturally, and the path I had taken dissolved into a maze of snow-covered illusions. Panic set in as I realized I was lost, the whispers now a cacophony of tortured souls seeking liberation. Desperate to escape, I stumbled through the distorted landscape, the apparition following silently. The sky above churned with dark, swirling clouds, lightning illuminating the night with fleeting flashes. The cold was biting, and my limbs felt numb as I pushed forward, the weight of the forest pressing down on me. Hours, or was it days, passed in a haze of fear and exhaustion. The boundaries between reality and nightmare blurred, each step forward fraught with uncertainty. Just as hope seemed to wane, I reached a dense thicket and broke through to find a hidden shrine, a stone altar adorned with ancient symbols and offerings left by those who had come before me. Realizing this was the key to breaking the curse, I placed my personal items on the altar: my camera, notebooks, and a small pendant my mother had given me for protection. Reciting the incantations I had found in an old journal, I felt a surge of energy course through me, the whispers aligning with my words in a harmonious plea. A brilliant light enveloped the shrine, and the oppressive darkness began to lift. The spectral apparitions, including the woman who had guided me, faded into the light, their faces now peaceful expressions of gratitude. The forest transformed once more, the twisted trees straightening, the path clearing as if acknowledging the release of the trapped souls. As the last of the spirits vanished, the fog dissipated, revealing a serene landscape bathed in the soft glow of dawn. I stood alone at the altar, the storm having subsided, leaving behind a tranquil silence. Exhausted but relieved, I knew I had succeeded in freeing the lost souls of Hoyaback, their suffering finally at rest. I made my way back to the entrance of the forest, the memories of the night etched deeply into my mind. Hoyaback remained as enigmatic as ever, its dark secrets now a part of its haunting beauty. The experience changed me, imbuing me with a profound respect for the mysteries that lie beyond our understanding and the enduring spirits that seek peace. Back in the safety of my home, I compiled my notes and footage, ready to share the story of Hoyaback with the world. But some things are better left unexplained. I mused, pondering the thin veil that separates our reality from the unknown. The whispers of Hoyaback lingered in my thoughts, a reminder that some places hold ancient sorrows and that our actions can either trap or release the restless souls bound by time and tragedy. Years later, whenever I hear the wind whisper or see the shadow of a tree bend unnaturally, I think back to that night in Hoyaback. The memory serves as a chilling reminder of the power of compassion and the mysteries that await those who dare to seek the truth in the most haunted of places. And as long as there are stories to be told and spirits to be remembered, the legacy of Hoyaback will live on, a testament to the enduring bond between the living and the dead. Story number 3. Whispers in the Sandstorm. I never believed in ghosts or supernatural tales. Growing up in Denver, surrounded by the Rocky Mountains, I had a healthy skepticism about anything that couldn't be explained by science or reason. But the Sahara Desert in 2020 changed everything I thought I knew about reality and the thin veil that separates the living from the dead. It was early March when my friends and I decided to embark on an adventure of a lifetime, a trekking expedition across the Sahara Desert. We were a group of 5: myself, Alex, Sarah, Mike, Jessica, and Tom. Each of us had our reasons for seeking the vast, uncharted expanse of sand and sky. For me, it was a chance to escape the monotony of city life and find some semblance of peace in nature's raw beauty. We arrived in Algiers and made our way to a small village on the edge of the Sahara. The locals were welcoming but reserved, their eyes hinting at stories untold and secrets best kept buried in the shifting dunes. Our guide, Hassan, was a seasoned trekker with an intimate knowledge of the desert's moods and mysteries. He warned us about the infamous fog dust storms, rare, yet deadly phenomena that could engulf entire regions in minutes, reducing visibility to mere inches and disorienting even the most experienced travelers. Undeterred by his warnings, we set off under the blistering sun, our spirits high and our backpacks filled with essentials. The first few days were idyllic. We marveled at the endless horizon, the interplay of light and shadow on the dunes creating a mesmerizing, ever-changing landscape. Nights were a blanket of stars, the cold desert air a stark contrast to the daytime heat. On the 5th day, as we ventured deeper into the heart of the desert, the weather began to shift. The sky darkened unnaturally, the air growing thick with an oppressive stillness. Hassan grew tense, his usual calm demeanor replaced by a sense of urgency. "A fog dust storm is approaching," he warned. "We need to find shelter immediately." We pressed on, hoping to outrun the storm, but within hours, the heavens opened, unleashing a torrent of sand and dust that blurred our vision and battered our bodies. The temperature plummeted as the storm raged on, the relentless wind whipping the sand into our faces, making each step a struggle. We took refuge in a rocky outcrop, huddling together as the world around us turned into a blinding, suffocating nightmare. In the midst of the storm, Sarah began to hear whispers, faint, sorrowful voices carried on the wind. At first, she dismissed them as hallucinations, the result of exhaustion and fear, but the whispers persisted, growing louder and more distinct. "Help us find peace." I tried to rationalize it, attributing the voices to our stressed minds. But deep down, a chill of unease settled over me. That night, as the storm finally subsided, we dared to emerge from our shelter, only to find the landscape transformed. The dunes had shifted, revealing the remnants of what appeared to be an ancient campsite, tattered tents, scattered belongings, and a few faded photographs buried beneath the sand. Jessica, ever the historian, approached a weathered photograph lying on the ground. It showed a group of travelers much like us, their faces etched with fear and determination. "Looks like we're not the first to trek through here," she mused, picking up the photo and showing it to us. "But why were they abandoned?" Tom shivered, pulling his jacket tighter. "Maybe we're not alone." That night, as we set up camp once more, the whispers returned, more urgent and filled with despair. The temperature hovered near freezing, and the isolation weighed heavily on our spirits. Mike suggested we perform a small ritual to honor the lost souls and ask for their guidance, something Hassan had mentioned as a way to appease restless spirits. Gathering around a small fire, we placed the photograph and a few personal items on a makeshift altar. I began to speak softly, reciting prayers of peace and remembrance. "If you're out there, lost and seeking peace, we honor your memory and seek to help you find it." As I spoke, the wind picked up again, swirling around us in a frenzy. The whispers grew louder, their voices intertwining with the howl of the night. Suddenly, a figure emerged from the shadows, ghostly and translucent, its eyes hollow yet filled with sorrow. The apparition of a woman, her dress tattered and her face marked by untold grief, stepped forward. "Why do you disturb our rest?" she asked, her voice echoing in the still night. "We mean no harm," I replied, trying to keep my voice steady. "We're here to help. Please, let us know how we can free you." The ghostly woman looked at us with a mixture of hope and despair. "The storm trapped us here. We couldn't find our way back. Our spirits are bound to this desert, unable to move on." Sarah stepped forward, placing a hand on the altar. "We want to help you. Tell us what we need to do." The apparition raised her hand, pointing towards the distant dunes. "There lies the heart of the storm, a sacred site where our journey was halted. Perform the ritual there, and our spirits may find peace." Determined to help, we decided to brave the harsh conditions and locate the sacred site. The following morning, armed with renewed purpose, we set out at dawn. The desert, now eerily calm, stretched endlessly before us, the footprints of past travelers fading into the sand. The journey was arduous, the unforgiving terrain testing our endurance. As we trekked, the landscape seemed to shift around us, the dunes forming intricate patterns that guided us forward. Hours turned into days, our supplies dwindling and our spirits fraying under the relentless sun and biting nights. On the third day, we reached the designated location, a rocky plateau overlooking a vast expanse of sand. In the center stood a stone altar, weathered by time and adorned with ancient symbols. The air was thick with a sense of reverence and sorrow, the whispers now a constant presence guiding us. We set up the altar, placing the photograph and our personal items as offerings. Mike began to recite the incantations from Hassan's notes, his voice steady despite the palpable tension. The wind picked up, swirling the sand around us in a mesmerizing dance, the storm's heart beating in rhythm with our prayers. As the ritual progressed, the sky darkened, and the air grew heavy with an otherworldly energy. The ground beneath us trembled, and the whispers transformed into a harmonious chant, the voices of the lost intertwining with our own. A brilliant light emanated from the altar, illuminating the entire plateau in a radiant glow. The apparition of the woman reappeared, her form now more defined and peaceful. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice filled with gratitude. "You have set us free." One by one, the spirits of the lost travelers materialized, their faces now serene as they embraced the light that surrounded them. The desert seemed to breathe a collective sigh of relief, the oppressive weight lifting as the spirits found their eternal rest. As the last of the apparitions faded, the storm that had loomed over us began to dissipate, the skies clearing to reveal a breathtaking sunset that painted the sands in hues of gold and crimson. We stood there, exhausted but fulfilled, knowing that we had made a difference, that we had helped the restless souls find peace. The journey back was peaceful, the desert now calm and beautiful in its quiet majesty. We returned to the village as heroes, our story a testament to the power of compassion and the mysteries that lie hidden within the vast, unforgiving desert. Years later, I still think back to that trek through the Sahara, the whispers of the lost echoing in my memory. Hoya Back may be a place of legends and fear, but it taught me that even in the most desolate and harsh environments, there is room for hope and redemption. The spirits we helped find peace still linger in my thoughts, a reminder of the thin line that separates our world from the next and the enduring bonds that connect us all. Story number 4. The Haunting of the Mojave Manor. I never believed in ghosts. Growing up in a small town in Texas, I learned to dismiss stories of restless spirits and haunted houses as nothing more than local legends and exaggerated tales. But everything changed the summer of 2018 when my curiosity led me to the Mojave Desert and the infamous Mojave Manor. The Mojave Desert, with its endless expanse of sand and rock, is a place of stark beauty and unforgiving conditions. It was there, amidst the scorching heat and chilling nights, that stood the Mojave Manor, a grand, yet dilapidated villa that once served as a luxurious retreat for the wealthy Arlington family. The manor had been abandoned since the sudden disappearance of the family in the early 1960s, and over the decades, it had earned a reputation as a hotspot for paranormal activity. I had always been fascinated by abandoned places, drawn to their silent stories and forgotten histories. When I heard about Mojave Manor, my interest was piqued. Armed with my camera, a flashlight, and a sense of adventure, I decided to investigate the manor, hoping to uncover the truth behind the legends. The journey to the manor was arduous. The desert roads were long and winding, flanked by barren landscapes that stretched endlessly under the scorching sun. As I approached the villa, the first signs of decay became apparent. The once grand structure was now covered in a thick layer of dust and sand, the paint peeling away from the walls, and the windows shattered, allowing the desert winds to howl through the empty halls. Stepping through the broken gates, I felt a shiver run down my spine. The manor loomed before me, its silhouette dark against the bright desert sky. The air was thick with an unsettling silence, broken only by the occasional creak of the old wooden doors swaying in the wind. Ignoring the growing sense of unease, I pushed open the main door and stepped inside. The interior of the manor was a stark contrast to the harsh exterior. High ceilings, ornate moldings, and grand staircases hinted at the opulence that once filled these rooms. Dust particles danced in the beams of sunlight that pierced through the broken windows, creating an ethereal glow. I began to explore, my footsteps echoing through the vast, empty spaces. As I moved deeper into the manor, the temperature seemed to drop, a sudden chill enveloping the rooms. I could hear faint whispers, barely audible, as if voices were trying to communicate from beyond. My heart pounded in my chest, but my curiosity kept me moving forward. I entered what appeared to be the main living area. The furniture was covered in white sheets, their forms ghostly and indistinct in the dim light. On the fireplace mantel, a dusty portrait caught my eye. It was a family photo, Mr. and Mrs. Arlington with their 3 children, smiling and happy. My stomach twisted with unease. The story went that the family had vanished without a trace, leaving behind only rumors and unanswered questions. As I examined the portrait, a sudden gust of wind slammed the door shut behind me, plunging the room into darkness. The whispers grew louder, more insistent. "Help us find peace." The words sent chills down my spine. I fumbled for my flashlight, its beam cutting through the darkness, revealing the room in a new light. I decided to leave the main living area and explore the rest of the manor. The whispers followed me, their presence undeniable. Each room I entered seemed to hold a piece of the Arlington family's tragic story. In the children's bedrooms, toys lay scattered across the floor, untouched by time. The master bedroom was a picture of devastation, broken furniture, shattered mirrors, and personal belongings strewn about as if a struggle had taken place. In the study, I found old journals and letters that hinted at the family's last days. The entries grew increasingly frantic, filled with mentions of strange occurrences and a growing sense of dread. The final entry was a chilling account of a nightmarish storm that had descended upon the manor, bringing with it voices and shadows that tormented the family until they vanished without a trace. As I delved deeper into the study, the atmosphere grew heavier, the air thick with sorrow and fear. The whispers now surrounded me, their voices overlapping in a haunting symphony. "We're trapped. Can't escape." I felt a presence behind me and turned to see a shadowy figure standing in the doorway, Mrs. Arlington, her face contorted in anguish. "Why are you here?" she whispered, her voice hollow and broken. I stammered, unable to find the right words. I just wanted to understand, to help." Her eyes bore into mine, filled with a sorrow that transcended the physical realm. "We can't move on. Not without closure." Determined to help, I promised to uncover the truth behind their disappearance and bring peace to their restless spirits. As I continued my exploration, the whispers guided me to a hidden basement, a place that had been sealed off from the rest of the manor. The heavy wooden door was partially ajar, revealing a narrow staircase that descended into darkness. With a deep breath, I descended the stairs, the air growing colder with each step. The basement was a labyrinth of tunnels and chambers, each one holding more evidence of the family's torment. In the center of the basement, I found an old, rusted door leading to a secret room. Inside, the walls were covered in strange symbols and the air was thick with an oppressive energy. At the center of the room stood an altar, its surface cluttered with candles, old photographs, and personal items of the Arlington family. It was clear that some form of ritual had taken place here, an attempt to summon or communicate with the spirits. Among the items, I found a diary belonging to Mrs. Arlington, detailing her descent into madness as the spirits tormented her family. The final entry was a desperate plea for help, a vow to protect her family from the malevolent forces that had invaded their home. As I read the diary, the temperature dropped further, and the candles flickered violently. The whispers reached a fever pitch, and the shadowy figures of the Arlington family materialized around me, their forms wavering between the physical and spiritual realms. "We need you to set us free," Mrs. Arlington pleaded, her voice filled with both fear and hope. "Complete the ritual, release our souls." Realizing that the ritual had been interrupted, I knew what I had to do. I began to gather the items needed to complete the ceremony, lighting the candles, placing the personal items back on the altar, and reciting the prayers of release as described in the diary. The whispers turned into chants, their voices harmonizing with my own as the energy in the room intensified. As I completed the final incantation, a brilliant light enveloped the room, the oppressive darkness giving way to a serene, peaceful glow. The spirits of the Arlington family began to fade, their forms dissolving into the light as their anguished cries turned into sighs of relief. The storm that had once tormented them seemed to dissipate, the air clearing as if the curse had been lifted. The basement was filled with a profound sense of calm, the whispers silenced and the shadows retreating. I knew then that their souls had finally found peace, freed from the torment that had bound them to the manor for decades. Exhausted but fulfilled, I made my way back to the main living area, the manor now feeling lighter, as if the weight of years of sorrow had been lifted. As I left Mojave Manor, the sun was beginning to rise, casting a golden light over the desert landscape. The mansion stood silent and still, no longer a place of fear and mystery, but a testament to the power of compassion and the enduring strength of the human spirit. The legends of Hoya Back and the haunted manor were no longer just tales of horror, but stories of redemption and the possibility of peace amidst the darkest of circumstances. Years later, I still think back to that summer in the Mojave Desert. The experience taught me that some places hold ancient sorrows and that our actions can either trap or release the restless spirits bound by time and tragedy. The whispers of Mojave Manor linger in my memory, a haunting reminder of the thin veil that separates our world from the next and the enduring bonds that connect us all. And so, whenever I find myself lost in the vastness of the desert or confronted by the unknown, I remember the Arlington family and the storm that brought them peace. The Mojave Manor remains a symbol of hope and compassion, a chilling yet inspiring reminder that even in the most desolate and haunted places, there is always a chance to make a difference and bring light to the shadows. Story number 5. Whispers of the Lost Dutchman. I never believed in curses. Growing up in Phoenix, Arizona, I was no stranger to the harsh desert sun and the unforgiving landscape of the Southwest. But the legend of the Lost Dutchman's gold mine had always intrigued me. Stories of hidden wealth, unexplained disappearances, and eerie phenomena surrounding the mine were the stuff of campfire tales and late-night bar conversations. As a freelance journalist with a penchant for debunking myths, I saw it as the perfect story to sink my teeth into. It was late October 2018 when I decided to take the plunge. Armed with maps, local folklore, and a restless curiosity, I set out into the heart of the Superstition Mountains, where the mine was said to lie hidden. Friends and colleagues warned me about the dangers, not just of the treacherous terrain and extreme weather, but of the supernatural forces that supposedly guarded the treasure. I laughed off their concerns, chalking them up to overactive imaginations fueled by decades of legend. The journey began under a blistering sun, the desert stretching endlessly before me. The Superstition Mountains loomed ahead, their jagged peaks piercing the sky like the spines of some ancient, slumbering beast. I navigated through narrow canyons and across rocky ridges, each step taking me deeper into the wilderness. The air was dry, the silence broken only by the distant cry of a hawk or the crunch of gravel underfoot. By the second day, the environment grew increasingly hostile. Sandstorms whipped up without warning, reducing visibility to mere feet and turning the landscape into a swirling sea of gold and gray. I found shelter in a narrow crevice, rationing my water and food, the legend of the mine pushing me forward despite the growing exhaustion. It was on the third night that the first signs of something amiss appeared. As I huddled around a makeshift fire, trying to stave off the chill, I heard faint whispers carried by the wind. At first, I dismissed them as the desert's natural sounds. But the whispers grew louder, more insistent, forming words I couldn't quite grasp. Unease settled over me as shadows danced at the edge of my vision, shapes that seemed to move with a life of their own. Determined to focus on the task at hand, I pressed on the next morning, following the coordinates I had meticulously plotted. The trail became less clear, the landmarks shifting as if the desert itself was trying to thwart my progress. My GPS malfunctioned, leaving me reliant on my dwindling maps and a stubborn will to find the mine. As the days turned into a week, the physical challenges were compounded by inexplicable phenomena. Objects disappeared and reappeared in odd places, and the temperature fluctuated wildly, from scorching heat to bone-chilling cold within hours. Nights were the worst. The darkness seemed to press in, the whispers turning into mournful cries that echoed through the canyons. One evening, as I trekked through a particularly narrow pass, I stumbled upon an old, weathered sign, "Welcome to Phantom Ridge." Curiosity piqued. I followed the trail it pointed to, only to find an abandoned campsite, remnants of tents and rusted gear scattered across the sand. It was clear that others had ventured here before me, but no one had returned. A sense of foreboding settled over me as I realized I was not alone in my quest. That night, I set up camp near the remnants of the abandoned site, trying to make sense of the eerie silence that enveloped the area. As I sat by the fire, the whispers returned, louder and more coherent. "Leave, turn back," they seemed to say. the voices filled with desperation and fear. I shook off the feeling, telling myself that fear was a natural response to the isolation and stress. But sleep was elusive. I was plagued by vivid nightmares, visions of previous treasure hunters lost to the desert, their faces contorted in agony, their voices begging for help. Each morning, I woke drenched in sweat, the echoes of their suffering lingering in my mind. The lines between reality and nightmare began to blur, the desert's malevolent presence seeping into my very soul. On the 10th day, exhaustion took its toll. My body ached, and my mind was frayed from the relentless stress. As dusk settled, I decided to take one last push toward the supposed location of the mine. The path led me to a secluded valley, the entrance to which was marked by an ancient stone archway covered in cryptic symbols. My heart pounded in my chest as I approached, the air thick with an oppressive energy. As I stepped through the archway, the temperature plummeted, and the sky darkened unnaturally, as if the desert had swallowed the sun whole. The whispers intensified, swirling around me like a storm of sorrow and despair. I could see my breath in the freezing air, each exhale a visible testament to the cold that now enveloped me. There, in the center of the valley, lay the entrance to the mine, an ominous, gaping maw in the earth, surrounded by towering rock formations that seemed to watch my every move. The ground was littered with old mining tools and rusted equipment, relics of those who had come before me. I felt an invisible force pulling me toward the entrance, the whispers now a chorus of anguished voices urging me to turn back. Ignoring the growing sense of dread, I approached the entrance, flashlight in hand. The air inside was frigid, the darkness absolute, broken only by the beam of my light cutting through the blackness. As I ventured deeper, the mine seemed to come alive, the walls pulsating with an eerie energy, shadows dancing just beyond the reach of my light. In the heart of the mine, I found what I had been searching for, a cavern filled with glittering gold, the legendary treasure of the lost Dutchman's mine. My heart raced with excitement and relief, the years of searching finally paying off. But as I stepped closer to the gold, the whispers reached a fever pitch, the voices now a cacophony of torment and rage. Leave or suffer. I froze, the realization dawning on me that the treasure was not just gold. It was a prison for the souls of those who had fallen victim to the desert's curse. The ground beneath me trembled, and the shadows coalesced into ghostly apparitions, their faces twisted in eternal suffering. Desperate to escape, I turned to flee, but the path had vanished. The mine now a labyrinth of shifting tunnels and endless corridors. The apparitions advanced, their spectral hands reaching out to drag me back into the depths. Panic surged through me as I searched for a way out, the whispers morphing into screams of despair. In a last-ditch effort, I remembered the symbols on the stone archway and the ancient tales of a ritual to release the trapped souls. Frantically, I retraced my steps, finding the entrance and the archway glowing with an otherworldly light. I began to chant the incantation I had read in an old journal, my voice wavering but determined. As the words left my mouth, the apparitions began to fade, their screams turning into sighs of relief. The mine trembled, the gold dimming as the curse was lifted. The ground opened, and a brilliant light enveloped the valley, the oppressive energy dissipating like morning mist. The whispers ceased, replaced by a profound silence that spoke of peace finally achieved. Exhausted and trembling, I emerged from the mine, the dawn breaking over the horizon and casting a warm glow over the desert. The legend of the lost Dutchman's mine had been both my obsession and my nightmare. But in the end, compassion had triumphed over greed, offering the lost souls a chance to move on from their eternal suffering. As I made my way back to civilization, the desert seemed less hostile, the whispers of the past now a distant memory. The treasure remained hidden, the curse lifted, but the experience left an indelible mark on my soul. I had ventured into the heart of darkness and emerged with a story of horror and redemption, a testament to the enduring power of the human spirit and the mysteries that lie buried in the sands of time. Years later, When I reflect on that fateful journey, I realize that some legends are born from truth and that the desert holds secrets far beyond our understanding. The Lost Dutchman's gold mine remains a beacon of both hope and despair, a chilling reminder that the pursuit of wealth can lead us into the darkest corners of existence. And as long as there are stories to be told and mysteries to uncover, the legacy of the Lost Dutchman's mine will live on, a haunting tale of courage, compassion, and the unyielding grip of the supernatural. Story number 6. Whispers of the Sonoran Woods. I never believed in ghosts. Growing up in Phoenix, surrounded by the vast expanses of the Sonoran Desert, I learned to attribute strange noises and eerie silences to the quirks of nature. The desert was my playground, a place where the harsh sun and rugged terrain forged resilience. But everything changed the summer of 2020 when curiosity led me to the heart of the haunted Sonoran Woods. It was a sweltering July afternoon when my friend Jake suggested a weekend camping trip to the lesser-known forest within the desert. He was an avid outdoorsman, always chasing the next adventure, while I preferred the comforts of urban life. Reluctantly, I agreed, hoping to escape the relentless heat of the city and maybe, just maybe, find some peace in the solitude of nature. We arrived at the trailhead just as the sun began to dip below the horizon, painting the sky in hues of orange and pink. The Sonoran Woods were a stark contrast to the open desert, dense with mesquite trees, scrub brush, and an unsettling stillness that seemed to press against our eardrums. As we set up camp, the air grew cooler, the shadows lengthening as night approached. That first night, the woods were silent except for the occasional rustle of leaves and the distant call of an owl. We sat around the campfire, sharing stories and enjoying the rare tranquility. It was then that Jake mentioned the legends, tales of spirits trapped in the forest, victims of tragic accidents who never found their way out. Locals spoke of eerie laughter echoing through the trees, shadowy figures darting between the trunks, and an oppressive feeling of being watched by unseen eyes. I laughed it off, dismissing it as folklore born from the desert's unforgiving nature. But as the night deepened, an uneasy feeling settled over me. The fire flickered, casting dancing shadows that seemed to move with a life of their own. Suddenly, a faint sound pierced the silence, a soft, childlike laughter that seemed to float on the breeze. "Did you hear that?" Jake asked, his voice tense. "Probably just an animal," I replied, though my voice betrayed my uncertainty. We tried to shake off the unease, but the laughter persisted, growing louder and more distinct. It was as if dozens of children were playing just beyond our sight, their joyous sounds tainted with an undercurrent of sorrow. The feeling of being watched intensified, a cold prickling at the back of my neck that made me glance over my shoulder every few minutes. The next morning, we awoke to find our campsite undisturbed. But the atmosphere had changed. The air was heavy, the usual desert sunlight now filtered through a thick blanket of fog that seemed to roll in from nowhere. As we packed up, the whispers of the previous night lingered in my mind, and I couldn't shake the feeling that something was watching us. Our trek deeper into the woods became increasingly disorienting. The trail markers seemed to shift, leading us in circles, and the once familiar landscape now felt alien and hostile. Hours passed without any sign of the trail, and desperation began to set in. We decided to push forward, hoping to find a landmark or a way out before nightfall. As dusk approached, the temperature dropped sharply, and the oppressive silence returned. We stumbled upon an old, abandoned cabin, its wooden structure weathered by years of neglect. Desperate for shelter, we decided to spend the night there, hoping to regroup and find our way out in the morning. Inside, the cabin was cold and dark, the only light coming from the fading daylight streaming through the broken windows. We lit a small fire in the stone fireplace, trying to warm ourselves. It was then that the phenomena escalated. The faint laughter from the previous night returned, now accompanied by the sound of footsteps pacing the floorboards above us. "Jake, do you hear that?" I whispered, my heart pounding in my chest. He nodded, his eyes wide with fear. Yeah, there's someone up there. We cautiously approached the staircase, the wooden steps creaking under our weight. As we ascended, the air grew colder, the oppressive feeling intensifying. At the top of the stairs, the hallway stretched out before us, dimly lit by the fading light. The footsteps stopped abruptly, replaced by a heavy silence that pressed in around us. Suddenly, the door to the far end of the hallway burst open, and a shadowy figure darted past us, disappearing into the darkness. We exchanged terrified glances, the realization that we were not alone sinking in. The laughter and whispers returned, louder and more frantic, filling the cabin with a cacophony of ghostly voices. "We need to leave," Jake said, grabbing my arm. "Now!" We fled down the stairs, the sounds of unseen footsteps and laughter chasing us through the cabin. As we burst outside, the fog had thickened, obscuring our view and making navigation nearly impossible. The laughter echoed around us, a haunting reminder that we were being pursued by restless spirits. We ran blindly through the Sonoran woods, the oppressive feeling of being watched intensifying with each step. The fog swirled around us, making it difficult to see more than a few feet ahead. The whispers morphed into cries of anguish, and shadowy figures seemed to materialize out of the mist, their hollow eyes following our every move. Exhausted and terrified, we stumbled upon a small clearing illuminated by the pale light of the moon. In the center stood a weathered stone monument, covered in moss and surrounded by ancient symbols etched into the ground. It felt like the heart of the forest, a place where the veil between the living and the dead was thin. Desperate for answers, we approached the monument, the whispers now converging into a single, mournful voice. "Release us. Help us find peace." I realized that the key to our survival lay in understanding and honoring the spirits trapped in the Sonoran woods. Drawing upon the stories Jake had shared, I began to speak softly, acknowledging the lost souls and their suffering. "We mean you no harm. We're here to help you find peace." As I spoke, the oppressive atmosphere began to lift, the whispers growing softer and more harmonious. The shadowy figures of children and lost travelers appeared around us, their expressions shifting from fear to gratitude. The air warmed slightly, the fog dissipating as if responding to our words. The spirits began to fade, their presence transforming from torment to tranquility. "Thank you," they whispered in unison, their voices now filled with relief and serenity. "You've set us free." The clearing was bathed in a gentle, ethereal light, and the oppressive feeling that had plagued us for so long was replaced by a profound sense of peace. The Sonoran woods, once a place of fear and mystery, now felt like a sanctuary for the restless spirits who had found their release. As dawn broke, the fog lifted completely, revealing the desert landscape in all its stark beauty. Exhausted but relieved, we made our way back to the trail, the haunting whispers now a distant memory. The Sonoran woods stood silent, the spirits finally at rest, their stories no longer echoing through the trees. We returned to civilization with a newfound respect for the legends and the unseen forces that inhabit the desert. The experience in the haunted forest taught me that some stories hold truths that transcend logic and reason, and that compassion can bridge the gap between the living and the dead. Years later, when I think back to that summer in the Sonoran woods, I still feel the lingering presence of those lost souls, their whispers a haunting reminder of the thin veil that separates our world from the next. The haunted forest remains a place of both beauty and mystery, its legacy a testament to the enduring power of compassion and the spirits that seek peace in the vast, unforgiving desert. Story number 7. The Paranormal Blizzard of Death Valley. I never planned to visit Death Valley. Growing up in Sacramento, I was no stranger to extreme weather, but the idea of enduring one of the hottest places on Earth was something I always dismissed. However, in the winter of 2019, driven by a mix of curiosity and a desire to escape the monotony of city life, I found myself booking a solo trip to explore the enigmatic landscapes of the desert. Little did I know, My journey would lead me into the heart of one of the most terrifying natural phenomena ever recorded in the region, the paranormal blizzard of 1974, Death Valley, with its barren expanses and scorching temperatures, was a place where few dared to venture, especially during the winter months. The desert's reputation for being unforgiving was well earned. But the tales of the 1974 blizzard were whispered among locals with a mix of fear and reverence. According to legend, an unprecedented snowstorm had swept through the valley, transforming the already harsh landscape into a frozen nightmare. More disturbingly, those who survived reported encountering supernatural entities, shadowy figures gliding across the snow-covered ground and hearing voices that seemed to emerge from the very sand itself. I arrived in Furnace Creek, the main hub of Death Valley. Under clear skies and mild temperatures, the town was eerily quiet, its buildings standing as silent sentinels against the vast desert. I checked into a modest motel, the air conditioning providing a welcome respite from the afternoon heat. That evening, as I sat in the lobby sipping a cold drink, I struck up a conversation with an elderly man named George, who claimed to have lived in Death Valley all his life. "You're not here for the usual tourist spots, are you?" George asked, his eyes twinkling with a mix of curiosity and caution. "No, I'm actually interested in the history of the area. Heard there was a massive blizzard back in '74? I replied, hoping to extract some useful information. George's expression darkened. "Ah, the blizzard of '74. That was no ordinary storm. It wasn't just snow and wind. It was something else. People say the spirits of those lost in the desert that night are still wandering, unable to find peace." I felt a shiver run down my spine. "Spirits? You mean like ghosts?" George nodded slowly. "Many believe so. They say the blizzard brought out more than just the weather. Shadows, whispers, things that move just beyond the edge of sight. It's why some parts of the desert are avoided after dark." Intrigued and a bit unnerved, I thanked George and decided to delve deeper into the legend. The next morning, I began my exploration, armed with a map of the area and a strong sense of determination. The sun was blazing, the desert sands shimmering under its relentless glare. I made my way toward the site where the blizzard had hit hardest, a remote area known as the Salt Flats. As I trekked through the shifting dunes, the landscape seemed to change around me, the familiar sand giving way to patches of ice and snow that glistened in the sunlight. It was an unnatural sight, one that immediately made me question the authenticity of the 1974 accounts. Nevertheless, I pressed on, eager to uncover the truth behind the paranormal phenomena. By mid-afternoon, dark clouds began to gather on the horizon, a stark contrast to the clear blue skies earlier. The wind picked up, carrying with it a chill that seemed to seep into my bones, quicken my pace. Sensing that a storm was approaching, the weather reports had been clear, but nature had a way of surprising even the most prepared. As night fell, the temperature plummeted, and the first flakes of snow began to fall, light and almost playful. Within hours, the snow intensified, and the wind howled with a ferocity that made it nearly impossible to see. I found shelter in the remains of an old mining outpost, its walls battered by years of sandstorms and now blanketed in fresh snow. The building was a relic of the past, the remnants of a time when prospectors had sought their fortunes in the unforgiving desert. Inside, the atmosphere was thick with tension. The howling wind outside was a constant reminder of the storm's power. But it was the strange noises that truly unsettled me. Faint whispers that seemed to echo through the empty halls, and the sound of footsteps pacing back and forth in the distance. "Hello," I called out, my voice barely above a whisper. "Is anyone there?" Silence answered me, but the whispers persisted, growing louder and more insistent. I tried to rationalize it, attributing the sounds to the wind and my own anxiety. But a deep sense of unease settled over me. As midnight approached, the storm reached its peak. The snow piled higher, and the wind's howl became a deafening roar. It was then that I saw them, shadowy figures gliding across the snow-covered ground. their forms barely discernible in the blinding white. They moved with an eerie grace, almost floating above the ground, their presence sending chills down my spine. Heart pounding, I grabbed my flashlight and followed the apparitions, hoping to find answers. The shadows led me to a secluded area of the salt flats, where the snow had accumulated into intricate patterns, almost like ancient symbols etched into the ground. The whispers here were louder, more coherent, their voices filled with sorrow and desperation. "We're lost. Can't find our way home," the voices seemed to say, their words carried on the icy wind. Determined to help, I knelt down, placing my hand on the cold, hard ground. "If you're trapped, I'll help you find peace. Tell me what you need." The air around me grew colder, and the snow began to swirl violently, the patterns on the ground shifting and changing. The shadowy figures approached, their forms becoming more defined, revealing the tormented faces of those who had perished in the blizzard. Their eyes held a mixture of fear and longing, their silent pleas echoing in my mind. One of the spirits, a young woman with haunting eyes, stepped forward. "The storm took us. We couldn't survive. We're bound to this place, unable to move on." I reached into my backpack and pulled out a small mirror, a tool I always carried for reflective purposes during my treks. "Maybe I can help you reflect on what you need to move on. Show me how." She nodded slowly, her form flickering like a candle in the wind. "You must honor our memories, acknowledge our suffering, and help us find closure." I understood that this was more than just a physical journey. It was a spiritual one. I began to speak softly, recounting the stories of those who had lost their lives in the 1974 blizzard, honoring their memory and expressing my desire to help them find peace. The whispers softened, the storm outside beginning to calm as if responding to my intentions. The shadowy figures began to fade, their forms dissolving into the night air, leaving behind a serene stillness. The snow settled into a peaceful blanket, the oppressive atmosphere lifting as the spirits found their rest. I felt a profound sense of relief, knowing that I had played a part in freeing these lost souls from their eternal torment. As dawn broke, the storm had passed, leaving behind a tranquil, snow-covered desert. I made my way back to the outpost, the memory of the night etched deeply into my mind. The Mojave Desert had shown me a side of itself that few had witnessed, a realm where the living and the dead intersected, bound by the timeless sands and the lingering echoes of forgotten tragedies. Returning to Furnace Creek, I shared my story with the locals, many of whom nodded knowingly, their eyes reflecting the same fears and respect I now held for the desert's mysteries. The legend of the paranormal blizzard of 1974 had been more than just a tale of survival. It was a testament to the enduring spirits that roam the desert, seeking peace and remembrance. Years later, whenever I find myself gazing out at the vast expanse of the desert, I remember that fateful night. The whispers of the lost souls linger in my thoughts, a haunting reminder of the thin veil that separates our world from the next. The Mojave Desert remains a place of beauty and terror, its secrets buried beneath layers of sand and snow, waiting for those brave enough to seek them out. And so, the story of the paranormal blizzard of Death Valley lives on, a chilling tale of nature's unforgiving power and the spirits that wander its frozen heart, forever searching for peace amidst the eternal storm.